My name is Jason. I'm 25 years old and I work as a software developer at a small tech company on the outskirts of the city. Mark and I have been friends since college. Over the years, we've remained close. The story I'm sharing today is about an unexpected day that forever changed my life and the lives of his family members. Mark and I have been friends for quite some time, but there was always something about his mother Claire that caught my attention. She had this incredible warmth and energy that was impossible to ignore. Every time I would visit them, we'd end up talking for hours, sometimes more than I'd talk to Mark. She was always easygoing, laughing at my jokes. She was stunningly beautiful, and there was something magnetic about her presence that made it hard for me to keep my distance. So one day when I found myself with some free time, I decided to surprise Mark by visiting. I didn't overthink it. I just grabbed my car keys and headed over. I didn't call first, thinking it would be a fun way to catch up. When I got there, Mark wasn't home. Claire answered the door with a look of mild surprise. She greeted me as usual, laughing softly and welcoming me inside. "I didn't know you were coming," she said, her easy smile lighting up her face. I rubbed the back of my neck and smiled. "I thought I'd surprise him," I said. CLA laughed and stepped aside to let me in. "He's out, but you're welcome to stay until he gets back." It started raining heavily, so going home wasn't an option. Claire glanced out the window, raised an eyebrow, and looked back at me. "You're definitely not going anywhere in this weather," she said with a grin. "Looks like you'll have to stay a bit longer." I nodded, secretly relieved that I had an excuse to stay. She led me to the living room, where we settled in, the rain providing a calming, intimate backdrop as we talked. I found myself enjoying her company more and more. Claire offered me a cup of tea, and we talked about work and a little about Mark too. Her laughter filled the room, warm and welcoming, making me feel completely at ease. Every now and then, our eyes would meet, lingering just a bit longer than usual, and I could feel a subtle connection forming as we chatted. She casually leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, and I couldn't help but notice her elegant posture. She was 50, but her energy and smile gave her a timeless quality that was irresistible. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but I could tell by the way her eyes twinkled with amusement whenever I looked at her that she noticed my attraction. "Jason," she said, with a sly grin, interrupting my thoughts. "You're unusually quiet tonight. Is something on your mind?" I stammered and nervously laughed. "I guess I just didn't expect to be here like this, just the two of us." She tilted her head, her expression playful and warm. "Well, it's a nice surprise," she replied softly. "Mark's not around much these days, so it's good to have some company." There was a casual tone to her words, but I could feel the underlying warmth that made my heart race. We continued to talk, and the conversation gradually shifted to more personal topics. She shared stories from her younger days and her past dreams, and how life had taken unexpected turns. I found myself hanging on to every word she said as the hours passed. The storm outside grew stronger with no sign of it letting up. CLA looked at the clock, then back at me. Her smile was thoughtful. It looked like the weather wasn't going to clear up anytime soon. She said it was really coming down out there. I nodded, glancing out the window at the torrential downpour. "I don't think I'll be able to make it home tonight." She nodded, her voice gentle and understanding. "You're welcome to stay here if you'd like. Mark's room is just down the hall." I smiled, grateful, though I was aware of the excitement bubbling up inside me. "Thanks, Claire. I'd really appreciate it." She disappeared for a moment and returned with some extra blankets, placing them beside me on the couch. Our hands brushed as she handed them to me, and I felt a rush of warmth spread through me, making me look up at her. She held my gaze, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. Her gaze, and for a moment the world outside seemed to disappear. "You know," she said softly, almost in a whisper, "I always thought you were a charming young man. And now that you're here, it's been really nice to have some company, just the two of us." I swallowed hard, feeling the pounding of my heart. "I feel the same way," Claire said. The air between us felt thick with unspoken words. She gazed at me, her eyes searching mine. Then, slowly, she leaned closer. I could feel the warmth of her body. I could smell her perfume. I knew this moment would be memorable. She held my gaze for a moment longer, then reached over and brushed a loose strand of hair from my forehead. Her fingers lingered just a bit longer than necessary. My breath caught. Her touch sent a spark through me, and I instinctively leaned into her hand. "Jason," she murmured. Her voice was soft and low. "You're really something." The words hung between us, and in that moment, I could no longer resist moving closer. I took her hand in mine. It was warm and soft, and she didn't pull away. She leaned in, her lips slightly parted, as if inviting me to come close. My heart raced as I leaned in and brushed my lips against hers. She responded with a tender, warm kiss. Her hand was resting gently on my cheek. We paused for a moment, and when our eyes met, there was no hesitation. I wrapped my arm around her and drew her closer as our kiss deepened. It was a passionate kiss that had been building all evening. She sighed softly, her hand moving up to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. It seemed like she'd been waiting for this moment too. The thrill of her touch made me feel alive. I couldn't help but trace the curve of her waist with my fingers, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath my touch. She slowly pulled back, her eyes glinting with a playful look. She whispered, "I never thought." I smiled and nodded. I was happy it was raining outside, but inside everything felt warm and close. She leaned back on the couch, and I followed, wrapping my arms around her and holding her close. Her fingers traced soft patterns along my back, and each touch sent new warmth through me. Our lips met again, this time deeper and more intimate. Her hands began to explore, and I couldn't help but feel the intensity of her warmth, inviting me in as if she had been waiting for this. The moment was just as much for me. Her fingers slipped down my arms, light and teasing, and I couldn't help but smile against her lips. She looked at me with that same soft warmth in her eyes. Her fingers rested against my chest as if she could feel my heart pounding beneath her touch. I leaned down, kissed her neck, and let my lips linger there, feeling her shiver beneath my touch. Each moment felt timeless, and I lost myself in the warmth of her embrace. Our hearts were beating in time with the sound of the rain outside. She sighed softly, arching slightly, allowing my hand to find the curve of her waist. It fit perfectly. Beneath my touch, encouraged by the way she responded, I let my hand travel slowly along her back, feeling the warmth of her sweater beneath my fingertips. She let out a quiet, inviting murmur, and her hand came to rest on my shoulder, pulling me closer. The feeling between us was magnetic, and I couldn't help but lean down, brushing my lips along her neck. I was enjoying the softness of her skin and the way she reacted with a little shiver, tilting her head to the side as if to invite me further. I pressed gently against her chest, making her body feel even more electric, and slowly tried to slide my hands inside her sweater. The sensation of her soft and firm chest made me feel more energetic, and I could no longer hold myself back. Our eyes locked, and there was an unspoken understanding between us. I leaned in again, my lips pressing against hers deeper. This time, I savored every lingering second. My hand found her hip, and I could feel her pulse quicken beneath my touch. She relaxed fully against me, molding her body to mine as I held her close. Every touch felt more natural and connected. She looked at me, her eyes filled with emotions that neither of us could express in words. With a soft smile, she leaned back against the couch, taking my hand and guiding it to her shoulder. Her fingers laced through mine in a gentle squeeze. I let my other hand slid down, resting on her leg. I could feel her warmth beneath my palm as I stroked her thigh softly. We were really close, and our kisses became slower. We savored each moment as our closeness deepened. I lost track of everything else but the feeling of her in my arms. When we pulled away from each other, we were breathless and dazed. The world outside had transformed. The rain poured heavily, casting a muted ambience that enveloped us in our own private universe. I could see her cheeks were flushed with warmth, and her lips were glistening from our kisses, which ignited a spark of desire in me. I had never felt anything like it, this deep, primal connection that drew me toward her, urging me to explore further. Maybe we should move this somewhere more comfortable, she suggested, her voice low and inviting, laced with mischief. I could only nod, feeling a rush of exhilaration wash over me as she led me down the dimly lit hallway toward her bedroom. The door opened a little, revealing a space that felt intimate and inviting. The room was softly lit by a lamp, and it was decorated with some nice furniture. But it was her presence that made it come alive. She turned to face me, her gaze steady and electric, with a kind of tension hanging between us. It was thick with anticipation, and then the door clicked shut behind us. The sound resonated in the silence, amplifying the moment. I stepped closer, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. My heart was racing as she took a step toward me. I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. The warmth of her skin ignited something deeper within me with a gentle tug. I pulled her closer, my other hand brushing against her waist, feeling the softness of her figure against me. She looked up, her eyes sparkling with a mix of desire and mischief. I could feel my resolve crumbling as I leaned down, capturing her lips once more. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent as I pulled her against me. Our bodies fit together perfectly. I felt her warmth radiated into me with each kiss, sending waves of electricity coursing through my veins. Her hands roamed up my arms, tracing every muscle before tangling in my hair, pulling me closer and urging me to explore further. As I broke the kiss, I looked into her eyes and saw the reflection of the heat and passion that had ignited between us. I pressed my forehead against hers, savoring the moment, feeling both exhilarated and vulnerable. "Are you sure about this?" I whispered, barely above a breath. "I'm sure," she replied. In the form of a soft smile, she nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied, her voice steady and filled with warmth. With that affirmation, I leaned down, capturing her lips again. This time, I stepped back, guiding her gently onto the bed. The mattress felt inviting, and as she sank into it, I hovered over her, feeling the weight of anticipation in the air. I took my time, letting my lips trail along her neck and kiss softly along her collarbone, feeling her shiver beneath. My touch, her fingers danced along my back, urging me on as I explored her inch by tantalizing inch, savoring every gasp and every sigh that escaped her lips. I paused for a moment, looking down at her, and was filled with longing and trust. I leaned in closer, our bodies aligning as I pressed against her. My hand brushed against her thigh in a soft yet possessive gesture that sent shivers through both of us as the rain continued to drum against the window. I got lost in her. The world outside faded away. I moved with an intensity fueled by our connection. Every kiss and every touch explored the depths of our desires. Our bodies moved together, lost in the rhythm of passion. I felt a sense of fulfillment wash over me. Each moment pulled us closer together. The night stretched on. It was filled with whispered laughter and gasps of pleasure. We lost ourselves in each other completely. The boundaries of our friendship blurred. They were replaced by something far deeper. It was something beautiful and wild. I had never imagined a night like this. Could this be how it would unfold each moment, drawing us closer and wrapping us in a cocoon of intimacy? Eventually, as exhaustion began to set in, I laid beside her, my arm draped protectively around her shoulders. We were both panting, our breaths mingling as we took in the aftermath of our connection. I felt her fingers play lightly against my chest, and I leaned down, kissing her forehead softly, relishing the warmth of her body against mine. "Tonight was incredible," I murmured, my heart swelling with emotions I couldn't quite name. She turned to meet my gaze, a soft smile on her lips. "It really was," she replied, her eyes sparkling with satisfaction and a hint of mischief. "I think I could get used to this." As we drifted into a peaceful slumber, the rain outside began to lighten, but inside our hearts remained intertwined, forever changed by this unexpected night of passion and intimacy. I knew then that this was just the beginning of something special, a story woven with threads of desire, friendship, and newfound love. We lay entwined in each other's arms, asking each other questions in the afterglow of our passion. The world outside slowly returned to normal. The rain had lightened, and the rhythmic patter against the window created a soothing background to our whisper conversations and soft laughter. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, the sudden sharp ring of the doorbell jolted me awake. I froze, my heart racing as I glanced at her. A mix of surprise and panic was in her eyes. The reality of the moment hit us like a ton of bricks. My friend's son was home. Was he here? I asked her, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, it's him, she replied, her mind racing. We quickly scrambled to straighten ourselves, but the frantic rustling of sheets and clothing only added to the chaos. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time, making my pulse quicken. Hide, she urged, her eyes wide with urgency. I glanced around the room, desperately searching for a place to go without thinking. I dove into the closet. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding in my ears as I held my breath, trying to hear what was going on outside the bedroom. Mom, are you home? I heard my friend call out. His voice echoed through the house. I thought I'd find you here, she said, opening the door to the living room. She seemed to compose herself quickly, despite the chaos in her heart. Yes, I'm here, she called back, her voice steady. She was tall, and her expression betrayed nothing. I couldn't help but admire her poise in such a tense moment. Did you get caught in the storm? He asked, stepping inside completely oblivious to the atmosphere in the house. I held my breath, wishing I could see his face. I wondered how much he sensed. Just a little shower, she replied, a hint of nervousness creeping into her tone. How was your day? She asked. Good, I replied. I was hoping we could hang out. I brought some snacks from the store, he said cheerfully. I couldn't help but smirk to myself, amused by the normalcy of his words juxtaposed against the wildness of what had just transpired. Just give me a moment, she said, glancing back toward the bedroom door as if she could sense my presence. I held my breath, waiting for what would come next. Would she invite him in? Would he sense something? Or would he miss it? I'll be right there, she said, turning away from the door, and she headed back to me, and I could see the resolve in her eyes. She was determined not to let this moment slip away. Quick, get dressed, she whispered urgently, her heart racing as much as mine. I quickly pulled on my clothes, trying to quiet my racing thoughts. I could hear my friend moving around the living room. I heard the sounds of bags rustling as he rummaged through them. Do you think he knows? I asked quietly, panic creeping into my voice. No, he can't, she replied, biting her lip. Her expression was a mix of excitement and fear. Just act normal. We'll figure this out. We braced ourselves for the return to reality. I stepped out of the closet, still feeling a bit nervous, and joined her in the living room. Just as my friend turned back toward us, I saw a big grin on his face. There you are, he said. I was starting to think you were hiding from me. He laughed, completely unaware of the charged energy lingering in the air. Just getting a few things organized, she replied smoothly, shooting. She gave me a look that said it all as we settled into the evening. Laughter filled the room, covering up the tension and unspoken words between us. My heart was still racing, thinking about the passion we'd shared. It was a tricky balance between friendship and new feelings, but in that moment, surrounded by warmth and the thrill of what had just happened, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the start of a complicated, beautiful story neither of us could have predicted.